Sorry about that, everybody. Can you guys see the screen? Are you seeing us or are you seeing the PowerPoint?
We're seeing you guys.
Okay.
Yeah. And just so you guys know, I'll have to leave a little bit early, which is why I'm not joining in person. So,
Oh, you could have come here, no problem.
well, I have another call that I have to be on, so I thought it would just be easier if I'm
Okay,
already.
no problem, no problem. Whichever is convenient.
I didn't know there was an in-person option.
Yeah, it was mentioned in the group, but yes, you're welcome to join to the admin building whenever. Any of the Mondays. Are you guys still seeing us or are you seeing the PowerPoint?
We're seeing the PowerPoint.
Perfect.
You're seeing us. Okay. Very good. So we will go to we'll go to the next slide. So what I said is today we'll have a little getting to know one another, getting familiar with the mode, and also getting ourselves introduced to the whole field of literature a little bit with the limited time that we have. Now, one question I have is, let's talk a little bit about your familiarity with literature. My question is, any literary work that you like? I want you to talk briefly about your favorite piece of literature or something that you remember from your studying of literature. All of us are familiar with literature. So let's have maybe an ice breaking that way, talking about our exposure to literature. Quickly, anyone can start. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm Felix. I think most of you guys know the close-knit group here. So I've been reading more so biographies, that qualifies as a literary work. I think in the past 5 years, especially I moved here 2.5 years ago. I think in that period, I was into history and biographical, literature. It would always appeal to me, people's perspectives in terms of where they came from, how that affected their future as well. So that was something that I think that's the past 5 years. Just like Picasso has these periods, blue and whatnot. I think the past 5 years have been biographical.
Any special ones you want to highlight?
Interesting. Right now, I'm reading Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights. It's on Audible. I ventured into, I guess, Hollywood stars before it was, historical people, senators, presidents, Obama's book. But right now it's Green Lights.
Very good. Yeah, anyone else?
My favorite of all time is Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky. I just happened to just start reading it, and it was just such a gift and opened up so many parts of my heart, understanding people, being a better Christian.
Yeah, so very philosophical, very deep. Karamazov, Brothers Karamazov.
And I think the coolest part for me was when someone asked him, how did you find all these people and all these, and he was like, they're all me.
Yeah.
I like to read novels. I think the first novel that really actually got me attracted to literature was Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison.
Wells, no? Is Wells.
Oh. No, not The Invisible Man. Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison.
Oh yeah, Ralph Ellison. Okay. Yeah.
That was like the first novel that actually made me open and attracted to other literature.
Yes.
So, hi, I'm Robert, and for me, the book that got me into the literary club. Okay, so the first book that actually made me want to, sit and read in a group and try to understand it was Herman Melville's Moby Dick. So it was a behemoth, I would say. So I couldn't actually grasp many things And that was my introduction into, finding peers who has similar interests in literature and, reading together, understanding together, and sharing together.
Whale hunting. Oh,
Yeah.
famous whale hunting. Moby Dick, yeah. Okay. Brother.
I don't know. I'm a hunt and take person, I guess. I don't know. I do not have a particular way of it, but I think I particularly like anything which is monastic, which is very profound. Connection I have is the spiritual writings of desert fathers. So I can, because the story begins and story ends, you can read it at one shot. I do not want to wait in suspense few days to find out what happened. So just small stories, they kind of help me. But I think I have picked few of them just for the fun of reading. Like I think a few years ago, I picked up Tom Sawyer from one point, and I also did a Wise Blood of Flannery O'Connor. Like they're like interesting books. But I wish that would have come on a discussion. But when I went to St. Louis, I've been to a place where they have this entire Mark Twain setting. So there's an entire village for Tom Sawyer that just makes the thing alive. Yeah, and I think the favorite scene will be the introduction to Huckleberry Finn. How Tom meets him. It's kind of very bizarre. Like he walks in with a dead cat, and like there is an inquiry about the dead cat. How much this dead cat will be worth it.
Okay, Darlene.
So I think as far as literary work goes, I got into literature after reading William Blake's Songs of Experience and Songs of Innocence. So I really like the Romantic period. And so from there, like William Wordsworth, Lord Byron and stuff like that. But I think for me, to this day, I think one of my favorite pieces what is it, like the series of poems is Songs of Experience and Songs of Innocence by Blake. And I think it was also because back in the day, like I was minoring in art at that point, and so the way I got into it was because back in the day, like when they would publish poems, like they would have a title page, and it was like you had to it was a work of art. And so I got into it, and then I started reading the poems, and it was just amazing. So yeah.
Joseph.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about books that like got you into reading, I got into reading at a very young age. And for me, as like an 8-year-old boy, it was this book called Aragon. It was like a fantasy book. And after that, I just like, it had like swords and dragons and elves and all kinds of stuff. So, like lots of fun stuff as a kid. But as I got older, in school, I had like my senior year of high school, I had to read a lot of literature, and 2 books that I read that made a huge impact on me, and really just kind of opened me up to the possibility of what literature could look like. Because up until that point, in a big way, literature had just been something entertaining, but it hadn't been like something that I thought of as something that could really, you could engage with deep ideas, and deep experience. But there were 2 books, and it was George Orwell's 1984.
1984. Oh.
Yeah, 1984, and Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment.
Wow.
I read both of those, and they're both dealing with some pretty heavy material. Yeah, and so that I guess that you could say that kind of sparked my literary journey as an adult.
Great. Who else is there online?
We have Sonia, who has to jump off soon, and also Amwa.
Yeah, come on. Who will speak? Sonia?
Sure. Yeah, I think for me, probably what sparked a love of reading was when I was detective fiction, Sherlock Holmes novels, things like that. And then I think to me, really what still holds a lot of love, and I go back to when I just I'm feeling exhausted by like deeper, harder works to read, are simple books like by C.S. Lewis or Jane Austen. I feel like they just have such a deep and such a human character, but in such simple and very witty ways. And yeah, with a sense of humor. And I love and enjoy that. And I know people were sharing earlier about a book they wish they had a book club with. I think like one of the first books I encountered and I was glad I read with a group with was St. Augustine's Confessions, because I don't think I would have made it through on my own. But the first book I read with a book club and enjoyed.
Very good. Then?
Okay, yeah. So I've been sitting here all this time trying to think what's my favorite book because there's so many. But like Joseph, like I've read from a young age. I loved reading as a kid. I think I learned how to read even earlier than most people do because I just was so excited to read. And yeah, I love Jane Austen, like Sonia. I love C.S. Lewis. I love oh my goodness, so many. I almost everything that everybody said I also love. But I do think I have a deep love for the fantasy genre. So like Lord of the Rings is something that I love, absolutely love. And then there's another series that I encountered in high school. It's called Tales of Goldstone Wood, and if you look at it, it looks like a chick flicky kind of book. Like there's like a girl's face on the cover and stuff, but it's actually like so well written, and it has like such deep themes. It has a lot of religious themes and a lot of like symbolism of like heaven and earth and of God and like the Trinity even, and it's really like one of the most beautiful series that I've ever read. But yeah, I love fantasy and how we can explore so many themes of reality and humanity through allegory and metaphor and symbolism.
Beautiful. Yeah. All this is spoken, no? Yeah, I think we'll continue. So first question perhaps is, what do we mean by literature? Any quick responses? When we say literature, in this context, when we say literature, what could be the main key thing? What do you say? Any thoughts? Just more than right or wrong, thinking is.
I always think of like novels and fiction, I guess.
It's an expression of a story, the use of words.
Yeah, expression of story, yes.
Feelings, you can elaborate on that.
Yeah, expression on feelings, yeah, good.
Yeah, I would say like a story like Felix was saying, but I would kind of add a little bit to it that it's not practical or utilitarian in any way.
Yeah, it's not utilitarian.
It's there for like pure enjoyment.
The emphasis on enjoyment. Okay.
Sometimes literature can also be about what's going on in the world, but without saying it directly.
Okay, indirectly presenting some core issues or values. Very good. Yeah. Yeah. Then. Yeah. So it's a written or spoken art that uses language to express ideas, emotions, and stories. May not be everything in the same book. Actually, sometimes I would like to divide between lyrical and narrative or dramatic. Lyrical and narrative. So lyrical, usually about poems we speak lyrical, but lyrical poems deal with thoughts and feelings. So I think one whole area is either thoughts or feelings of the person who is expressing. My ideas can be a lot of ideas. When poems can be about ideas, or it would be, may not be fiction, but non-fiction ideas, a lot of ideas, or sometimes feelings. A lot of poems are to do with feelings. So we speak of the lyrical part then. The other is story part. Definitely in a story there has to be people, incidents, happenings, a context. All this is there in dramatic, or sometimes we say narrative, a narrative part. There can be poems that are with stories, novels with stories, or any other form. So then it encompasses a wide range of genres, including poetry, fiction, non-fiction, drama. It goes on, but traditionally we speak of at least this prose, poetry, drama. This is what we usually say. But prose can be fiction and non-fiction, but then now speak of other categories also. So, yep. Now, one question is, for example, we have come together to reflect on some literature. But why? What does it do? A good question. Or what is the importance of literature? Or what it adds to our lives? I think this is a very important question. In a variety of ways, people have asked. Of course, we are attracted to literature, but why? Why literature? Any thoughts quickly?
I'm thinking how Pope Benedict has this beautiful verse about worship, but he talks about the proper worship of God also leads to the wonder at man. But I feel like literature also does that. When you read beautiful literature, it makes you have a sense of wonder for what God has made me and what God has made other people around me. So it just, otherwise, like, it can be very easy to reduce people or yourself to manners or faults, or so literature just like, the depth of man.
The wonder that is human, the wonder that's, or the wonder that's world, wonder that's human being. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, good.
Well, very often it can help us to visualize or even experience a different life that we cannot normally experience in our own. I think it's like a pathway to another person's being.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that. I mean, I just remember one of the first books, I think, what got me into literature, Daniel Defoe, Robinson Crusoe. And he sets out on the ship, and it's all about perseverance. So I'm in fourth grade, and I have a physical realm around me, parents and all that stuff. But I'm sitting in my room, and I'm in these foreign lands and learning about perseverance. And these things touch you. They're looking back 35 whatever years back, and these are the little fragments that tapestry of our life. That I'm realizing even now. So
I used to read Tarzan, the Ape Man. Something like this, no? Yeah. Come on, online people also. Yeah.
I think it's kind of like art, right? Because one, like, it definitely kind of speaks to like the certain like truths of humanity. It also sort of preserves history, and you're able to experience history that
history in another way.
even if it's history, it's almost like in some ways you can kind of relive it and experience the emotions. Then I feel like just like maybe like an artwork, it gives you a lot of freedom for interpretation. So like if you were you know, like I remember reading a book in high school, and it was like a short story, and I was talking to a friend of mine, and the way that I imagined the characters, like and the sort of like the visual scenario of the story was so different from hers, and it just, as we kind of got into it, it spoke to like how our own human experiences, our own backgrounds, and who we are as people was brought into like how we colored the storyline, right? Or like how we visualized it. And so I think with literature, it just sort of bridges this gap between people too, to able to understand them from a deeper perspective and their experiences.
Yeah, when Jolly's saying that, one thing I think is, see, there are plenty of novels that have been brought into silver screen films. But sometimes, no, the literature does something and films do something entirely different. Sometimes, for example, I have been teaching this novel, Life of Pi. But sometimes looking at the film Life of Pi, I was so disappointed. Because what we visualize, you don't see there, no, because as Johnny said, sometimes we see so many things, we see such dimensions, but then they cannot express it there on screen. Yeah, true. So our imagination sometimes fly high.
We can see things which they cannot
Yeah, I
capture.
know. Yeah, true. Very true.
I think there is something human about literature, the corely human, the way we are creative. You know, I would phrase it this way, you know, a man can think about a monkey and make a story about a monkey. But for a monkey, the monkey itself is the story. I don't think a monkey is sitting around and thinking about a man and making a story about it. I think that is unique. There's a unique perspective of how literature can expand us. But that itself can become a weapon against it at some point, where we kind of make a concept and give it to people's hand and say, this is who you are. Everything else is illusion. So you kind of, you know, idealizing something. And I think there is something which is connected to the literature. There is both sides to it. Yeah. But it definitely makes us human in that sense.
It's one of the few things that can introduce a new inner feeling. Sonia was talking about Jane Austen. For me, it was very beautiful. Certain characters, I would admire people like that, but I never had access to their inner world. So the way that the literature was written, it just like gave access to a new interior feeling. That I don't think you can look at people, but literature also introduces you to the inside of a person.
I was suddenly thinking of, when you were discussing, I was thinking of Hopkins, Gerald Manley Hopkins, a Jesuit priest, a British Jesuit priest, especially his, and I've been teaching many of his poems, but then I was suddenly thinking of the Windhover. One of his poems is the Windhover. Windhover is this kite, this this bird, this eagle, or this bird. So and the subtitle is, I think, the Windhover, that's this bird, to Christ my Lord. Then when this bird is flying, so I found this bird in flight. It's a short poem, but then he goes on saying that everything about what Christ did, that's what he's seeing in the beautiful flight of this bird, and it becomes such a glorious, ecstatic reflection on what Jesus did for me and the world. It comes that way. So just a bird flying and moving around in the sky for Hopkins, it is a very deep mystical experience expressed in poem. So we enter into these new sites which we don't see perhaps, and we are opened up into these new visions that other minds are capable of. Yeah. Yeah, some of my quick, what is it, what you're asking is, what does literature do? Very simply, it's a powerful stress reliever. When you're bored in life, or when you're scared. But such good literature can be Psalms in the Bible. Or go back to David again. Or a familiar, maybe poems of someone we love, which we have read again and again, a stress reliever.
What do you think of Anne Frank in this concept of fear?
Yeah.
Did she enter into her literature
Yeah.
literary side?
I know, it is a non-fiction, very beautiful, famous one. No. So no, yeah. Then fuels imagination, as we have all said. Sometimes, if we don't read, we are not introduced to literature. Sometimes we do not read, even without that possible. But then this flying high, we become much more familiar. This is imagination, or improves conversation, concentration, and focus. Yeah, we become much more focused in life. Then keeps the brain active and healthy. Definitely, if you read, you can keep yourself healthy. I think not only brain, even physically also, I suppose. Then vocabulary. We learn new words. One word means it's one world, they say. A word is not something simple. Then writing skills. Without knowing, our mind is formed. One of my friends, he's no more, an old man, but he used to be he was an advocate. He used to read a lot of Shakespearean dramas again and again. A famous lawyer, but then he would come and sit with me to understand a little bit more about Shakespeare. Then he would say that he's reading because they have to write really precise and focused writings and languages as lawyers. He says reading Shakespeare trains him to phrase his legal documents in a better way. Just that. So better writing. Then reflection on life and society, already said. A reflection on life, reflection on society, many things that are happening, where the world is going, variety. Communication skills, definitely. I'm not good at quoting passages, but some people, how beautifully they quote. But I'm good at recalling certain things from various literary works. Sometimes this comes very handy when we are talking, bringing up certain of our insights from certain famous works. This will, spice up our conversation. Critical thinking, really analytical, critical. History. Already, I think, was Jolly speaking of history or others? Yeah, history. Sometimes, something I like is when you go into long flights. And so one thing you have to watch some film. Then the first question is what kinds of films to watch? My first choice is good history related films. If there is history into literature or going back into lives of people, either present history or past history, beautiful. Again, encourages empathy. we really enter into others' world, understand others' world. Yep. Now we quickly, perhaps we already spoke, but we'll return to classification, categorization. So, how do you categorize? I already mentioned one is poetry. What is poetry? We are familiar with, anyway, we'll have to go deeper into poetry because we are going to study a poem. So poetry is imaginative and creative language. Actually, in one way, poetry, a poem is exploring the possibilities of words, phrases, and constructions. That's in a way, poetry is a flower of language. That's right. So, and emotions or painting vivid imagery and convey ideas. Convey ideas in a very beautiful, concise, powerful way. They often employ techniques such as rhyme, meter, metaphor, symbolic language. So in all these ways, it adds to communication of language. One thing I was thinking, in one sense, we use a lot of poetic language. Maybe when we are using some phrases, or even when we are, shouting at people, or quarreling. Sometimes even quarreling is the time when we use a lot of poetry. Yes. Quickly, some road note taken. I had already forwarded to you. Could you?
Homework.
It's all because of feelings.
I know. I told him I was going to be picked on. I'll take it. Not a problem.
Yeah.
The book.
Ask for homework before the first class.
I sit in the front of the class.
Yeah, but road not taken is very interesting, my life is this. It's a very beautiful way. Sometimes we think that, so if I had not taken literature and if I had taken history, what I would have become. Or if I had not become a teacher, but a scientist or a priest. If I had not married Audrey, my wife's name is Audrey. Sometimes she says, no, you should have married that other girl. That's the way of her taking revenge on me. The other girl. So she knows about the other girl. So she sometimes says, you should have married the other girl. Your life would have been very, very different. Definitely. This is road not taken. Then Shakespeare's, just some examples. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate than summer's day. He goes on speaking about his friend, their friendship, and it's a sonnet, Shakespeare's famous sonnet about summer, comparing the love, etc. Okay, another one is fiction, stories, unreal, as we said. Fiction is unreal. So something imagined, something made up. We all do that. It's beautiful lines, no? We say don't say lies, and we teach children all stories.
Fables, Aesop's fables.
Yeah, Aesop's fables, all kinds of made up things. So fiction could novellas, shorter ones, short stories, or fables, a variety of other kinds of stories. Kill a Mockingbird, happily, famous.
A generation of lawyers literally
Sure.
came in saying, because of that one book.
Very, very famous one. Really, some consider one of the classical American.
And she never wrote again.
No,
Yeah, it was the one-
just one.
yeah.
She became,
Unbelievable.
and the film became also that film
Yeah.
Oscar winning film also. No? Then Call Me Ishmael. This is how Moby Dick begins. Call Me Ishmael. Very, very interesting. Sometimes when I speak of this fiction, we speak about these points of view. Sometimes points of view. There can be first person narrative. That means I. So sometimes for first person narrative, I speak of this Moby Dick. Moby Dick is call me Ishmael. And he's saying that he's a teacher. Sometimes when he gets bored with life, he goes into these voyages, you know. And the one easy way is get into this whale hunting ship. And also he'll get some money also. But then when he gets bored with taking classes, teaching children, you know, same faces, you know, boring, you know? So they gets into a ship and he goes, and he speaks about this evil person. You remember his name?
Yeah.
Ahab. Where was it? Ahab. You know, the biblical character Ahab, a very personification in one way of cruelty, you know, Ahab. The monomaniac. He has only one vision of, you know, killing this white whale. He's so angry with that white whale. And he sacrificed it. So anyway, Melvin's this thing. Another is non-fiction. Dealing with facts, real events, real people. So maybe essays. Some are very interesting essays like when we think of non-fiction, borderline thing is Charles Lamb, old one of the earliest non-fiction. No, but he has written Shakespeare's stories retold also. So a variety of essays. Charles Lamb's essays are very famous. There are other essay writers also. Very. Then you were speaking of biographies, no? Mm-hmm. Biographies, autobiographies. Anne Frank, isn't it? Yeah, examples I was mentioning. Yep. Next. Yeah. Diary of Anne Frank. A variety of other non-fiction. Or I was thinking of this one, American self-reliance. One of they say this. The essay Self-Reliance by, was that influencing the American thinking, confident thinking of Americans, no? Was it Emerson? Emerson, yes. Good, thank you. Emerson, and the other one was Thoreau. Gandhiji was influenced very much by today's Gandhi's, demise. No, yes. So Gandhi, they say Gandhi was influenced by two main sources. One was the Sermon on the Mount. One of the greatest influence of Gandhi was Sermon on the Mount for his non-violence, the idea of non-violence. The other was Thoreau's. Yep. Is it Thoreau's?
Simplified,
Yeah.
Walden.
Now, Walden is Thoreau's other famous one. So, but is non-cooperation? No. So yeah.
Civil disobedience.
Civil disobedience. Yeah. His famous essay, Civil Disobedience, very interesting. He said, I will not pay tax. He said, I will not pay tax because the government is using this tax money to fight war. I have no part for this war, so I'm not going to pay. But then the municipal clerk comes and says, sir, I will pay your tax, but don't create problems. He says, no, arrest me. That's what I want. Please arrest me and put me in jail. That's what I want. So he holds others to arrest him and put him in jail. Civil disobedience. Gandhi was very much, like this idea. Only they put him only one day. But then still he's writing around this civil disobedience. thorough. All these I'm saying non-fiction can be very powerful. Perhaps we are so familiar with non-fiction in a variety of forms. Perhaps journalism is another big area of non-fiction. And here, finally, we are thinking of drama. Drama. Actually, what makes drama different from fiction is drama also has got character, story, perhaps context, etc. But drama is created to perform. That's the main difference. So for ages, from Greek time onwards, one of the earliest forms of literature was drama. They even in the temples, not only Greek, but even Christian setting, the Middle Age Christianity perhaps is one source through which drama developed, because in the churches there were mystery plays and miracle plays, because they communicated. Even Jesus used a lot of fiction, no? So to touch people, literature was very, very important. Jesus uses poetry a lot. Perhaps Jesus uses very much poetry and also forms of fiction very beautifully. He communicates, he uses it. So drama is another. So it includes plays, musicals, and other forms of dramatic performances. And perhaps to perform, it also presumes collaboration with a variety of other types of talents. Directors, actors, musicians, costume designers, makeup artists, stage setting, even audience. They say nowadays people say that even audience also controls drama. So without audience, drama will not be drama. So the audience is also one of the ingredients of
like when you're on a Zoom call and everyone's what's it called?
I know, black. Yeah. Okay. So I was thinking of you can quote a lot of dramas, but then Hamlet. Some of the dramas are so powerful. Like I was today thinking of this one, Emperor Jones. Very powerful American drama. Eugene O'Neill's Emperor Jones. One, like not in Haiti, but one of those islands where one person somehow he's making himself an emperor, but then some of his superstitions and some of his past generational prejudices never leave him. He's a slave of all these perhaps African, Aboriginal fears, and so how it haunts him. That's the very beautifully presents all that. Perhaps in no other way these things can be presented except through this 2 hours, 3 hours of a drama. Eugene O'Neill's what's that? Emperor Jones. That way, So dramas can be very powerful. Or they say Ibsen's A Doll's House. When Nora, a woman, finally she is getting liberated. She realizes that when I was a girl, I was pleasing my dad all the time. Now as a married woman, my world is my husband and pleasing my husband. And no father wants a thinking daughter. And no husband wants a thinking wife. I don't know whether we will agree with that. Finally, after the first thing, she decides to become a thinking person. This shocks the husband so much. He says, "What are you doing?" And finally, she decides to take time to go alone and think. But her husband says, no, you can never do that at this midnight. She says, why not? And finally, she gets out of the house and bangs the door. That's what we hear at the end of it. And they say that that final banging of the door in a doll's house shook the foundations of Western civilization. All the women movements came from Nora's banging of that door, it seems. It's very powerful drama. This is a doll's house. So who is the doll? A doll's house. She decides to question this doll's house. What I'm saying is that drama can be, here, Hamlet. Very powerful. Hamlet is a very philosophical thing. He's the famous soliloquy. There are 7 + 1. What's in Shakespeare's times? Even now, sometimes we have this thinking aloud, soliloquies. Sometimes the inner confusions and inner conflicts are brought forth through these utterances of the characters, soliloquy. So this is a most famous soliloquy, I think, among the whole world. To be or not to be? That is the question. So people still continue to debate. Easy debating on suicide or existence, personhood, to be or not to be. That is the question. Whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against the sea of troubles and by opposing end them. So, should I fight or do something else? Fight or flight? So here's a long. So drama can be very, very powerful. What we are saying is literature is a variety of these things. Fortunately, the long poem that we are going to study mixes all this in a very intricate way. There is some ways of fiction is there. A lot of poetry is there. Etc. Yeah. Quickly, 5 more minutes. How to relish it? One question. How to enjoy literature? Any thoughts quickly? We all do.
Think of it as just like how you would enjoy a glass of good wine. A person needs to be in the right disposition, right time, right place, have a calm mind, and then take time with it.
It is about drinking a good draught of wine.
The company you keep.
Yeah, your company you say,
A little bit I know about T.S. Eliot. I mean, he was born here but moved to Britain, right? And he was amongst a crowd that was also thinking in a similar way. So just like we're sitting here. Similar likes.
For me, it's always been about like sharing the experience I have. Because like I was never able to just read literature by myself and that have it end there, but I always have to share the experience, the goodness that I have.
Very quickly. Some points. Start by reading the text through once, paying attention to the overall story or message. Sometimes even Bible reading. Sometimes I think Bible first you have to read, but then don't stop there. I think whatever we are saying about this thing is perhaps for us it's beautifully about scripture study is very, very important. The thing. 2, take note of the setting, characters, and plot. I think a little bit of reflection on the background is very important. Right. Then look for literary devices such as some devices that will help us. Sometimes when you're drinking a wine, sometimes a little discussion on that wine is important, they say. Isn't it? Or else we are eating something, so this is about it's what are the ingredients and this is so you're discussing about it is something very, very important. And knowledge adds to reading. Read the text again. This time more closely and actively. Perhaps what you're saying is here in company is good. Taking note of the author's word choices and tone. There is music in most literature. So we have to have an ear for that. Then sometimes when you want to go to research any historical or cultural context relevant to the text, what is the, sometimes I tell my students, for us when I teach in India. So in India, one problem is that here they speak of 4 seasons: spring, summer, autumn, winter, very, very different. But in India, we have only 1 season, maximum 2 seasons. Rainy season and season where there's no rain. Otherwise, no difference. Trees are the same. Landscape is the same. Maybe water will come, there's no water, that's all. Nothing changes. Sometimes for us, it's very difficult to really enter into the Western literature. Same way back to India. And Indian literature, perhaps it's really, you will have to see what is the Indian locale, the mindset, etc. It's very, very important. So then consider the author's intended audience and purpose of writing the text. Sometimes when you say Bible, we always say, who was the writer? Who is the writer? To whom is he or she writing? And there is no biblical she, I suppose, unfortunately. Finally, reflect on your response to the text, and consider how it relates to your own experiences and perspectives. I think this journey becomes a very enriching. Sometimes even one piece of literature can transform us deeply. Okay, just one thought and I finish. We are going to talk about T.S. Eliot from next week onwards. So finally, any quick thoughts, expectations, or requests? Anything? Yeah, online friends also. Any requests?
Oh.
Yeah.
I've been doing some research on just general in Lectio Divina. So we do a 4-step of Lectio Divina. The standard steps are it becomes with Lectio, then Meditatio, Oratio, and Contemplatio.
Okay.
But the Lectio itself is so deep that the whole point of the way it was taken in medieval context is you are actually entering into a garden with the text. And it's kind of you're being there, you're like revolving there, and then you're like taking the fruits from that garden and enjoying it. That's when you are moving into contemplation.
Okay.
So like also I started. I'm going to give a conference to middle schoolers, which is going to start on this Wednesday, and it's basically Lectio Divina.
Okay.
So I've been like focusing on this element of Lectio. So I want to like take it apart for them, like when I talk with them. So it's very special for them to begin this way and to get into a text like this. This kind of gives you perspective to read the gospel and stay with it, and that next steps will come later. But just spending the time with reading itself, it's a very I look forward to learning things from it, which will actually help me to grow closer to Christ through the scriptures.
Actually, when I teach, I always say that literature and appreciation of literature grew out of scripture studies. Especially biblical studies are millennia old, not centuries old, millennia old. Even at the time of Jesus, they are already speaking about how to appreciate a text, how to comprehend a text. Jesus is saying, you don't know how to interpret a text. You go wrong, he's saying. So because they already have a way of interpreting the prophets, histories, poems, everything was already well developed. So the richness that we have, literature is only taking a little bit of this biblical scholarship. Vice versa. For us, if we learn to go a little bit more into literature, our reading of the word can become very deep. Especially T.S. Eliot to the wasteland. It is Christian tradition. Word of God. My class may be boring, bear with me. But then, and in appearances, Wasteland is terribly intimidating, but it is so deep. That's why it's surviving now almost 100 years. Yeah. Anything, Jolly? Finally,
No, I was just wondering if there was like I don't know if this is possible or not, but I'm kind of the person that I like to go back and marinate in it for a while. So if somebody's taking any general notes, or if there's a place for all of us to dump our thoughts in some way, I don't know if that could possibly be helpful.
good.
So we can put together a Google Doc and
Yeah.
I'll put the links I'll upload it to.
That'll be very good. Our some thoughts. Even if you can't write even voice. Voice can be converted into text now so easily. You
Should
mean,
we just message on WhatsApp, or is that too rudimentary, or Google Doc maybe?
what do you suggest, Jolly?
Maybe Google Doc, because there's a comment feature, so maybe every if there's multiple, if or maybe one section of different people want to offer their thoughts, it could be a little bit easier just logistically.
Yeah, very good. Beautiful. Good thought, Jolly. Okay then, thank you. We will meet next. This time is okay? Yeah, okay. Okay, then we conclude by saying glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. To the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, darling.
Bye.
Bye-bye.